Hello everyone, and welcome to another edition of Fundamentals of Art. And today I'm going to show you how to draw Celtic art. This is an example of Celtic art, and what we got here is a piece of art that is similar, or it could be described as a woven drawing. And this is this woven drawing which you see here, where it looks like one of these lines are either going over top of or underneath, basically weave together a picture, and inside of the picture are often pictures of animals which represent a person's inner strength or expresses the person through the animals. Now, what makes Celtic art very distinctive, as I mentioned earlier, is that it looks like it's woven. It kind of looks like tree branches or perhaps roots of a plant. And the reason for this is because the Celtic people, which were a medieval people who find their original origins in Ireland, the Celtic people, they worship nature, and they believe that nature had magical powers or magical properties. Now, there's a bit of a legend that goes with how Celtic art came to be, and that is that, well, first of all, the Celts were pagan, which means that they worshipped made-up gods. Now, at the time, the belief system of Celts were, they believed that these systems of worshiping gods, which later became known as Wiccan witchcraft, they believed that if they drew the roots of trees and branches, that somehow they could capture the spiritual power of nature. Well, Celtic art's been around a long time. You probably have seen it in a church. For example, the woven drawing that you see here is a style that perhaps you've seen either on a gravestone or a church stained glass window. And what started out as an art form where it was pagan, which means that the Celts, they didn't really worship a particular religion at the time, and religions, there weren't really that many of them back then. This is all before the time of Christianity. So through the course of time, this style of art has stayed around, and today it's very popular in tattoos. So let's learn about how to draw this style of art. Here we go. We're going to work on a piece of art that is going to be very basic, and I'm going to really simplify it so that everybody can experience some success with this art project. Now, here's what I want you to do, and I'm going to talk about a couple things before we actually begin. For it to look 3D, the Celtic art often has negative spaces. The negative spaces, or the empty spaces in between the positive spaces, they're filled in solid with black, and that becomes a part of the style of the art and really makes it look 3D. Here, what we're going to do is this. You're going to make a series of lines that will either loop over or under one another, and the shadow that exists underneath of an existing line that you draw, well, when you put that shadow in, that value, it's going to make things look like they're over top of one another. It's an overlapping effect is essentially what you're creating. The negative spaces are filled in solid with black. Now, this part you should do at the very end after the drawing is complete. Here are a few ideas to get you going. Celtic art often has pictures integrated into the line drawings themselves, and you can stylize it with imagery similar to what you see here, and this is sometimes today known as tribal art, which really all finds its origins in the Celtic style. To begin, and to give you a place to start, I like to use this sort of fork in the road, and when you look at this, folks, this does look like a road. Perhaps it could be a bridge going over top of another road, and if you think of it that way, it might help you to draw it and make a little bit more sense out of the confusion, because this can be kind of a confusing drawing to make. So here we go, and I'm going to get started, and I'm going to share with you some techniques so that you know how to do this. First of all, it's not as hard as it seems. What you want to do is start off from one end of the paper or the other. It doesn't really matter where you begin, but for this assignment, you want to draw your Celtic design from the top to the bottom and the left and the right, and the design is going to take up the entire surface of the paper for the full grade. Now, as you can see here, I started off with 2 parallel lines, and like those birds that perhaps you drew in elementary school, that bee or that fork, well, if you don't know what to do, all you need to do is draw that V, and look, when I add these lines onto it, now it becomes like the fork in the road, and it's going 2 different directions. Now, to continue this someplace further, if you're not sure what to do after this step, well, just make yourself another V. And now I can go in 2 other directions, as you see here. Now, your goal is to create an illustration that appears to be laced, overlapping, woven, and it's going to look like it's 3D. For right now, try to put making a design on the back burner for a little bit, and let's, for this exercise, let's just get down the technique that's used. And once you understand it, later on, you can think about the kind of subject matter that you wish to integrate into the Celtic design itself. So I see 2 openings here, and what I can do is I can join them, just like that. Now, this does not look like it's over top of or underneath of anything, so I'm going to need to do that. And one way I can do that is this. I can turn into the wall, and when you encounter the wall, you want to stop. You want to stop so that you can pick up on the other side, like you see here, and well, here I have an opportunity to make this path go over top of the other. So what you can do is just erase away a break. And now, when I draw, it looks like it's going over top of it. Once again, you can make that V, and we can take it 2 different directions. Now, to really make this look like this is over this, we're going to add in a little bit of a shadow. And these parts here, we're going to fill those in really dark. And I'm going to press hard using a lot of line weight for that. And when I do, it not only emphasizes the path that I've drawn, but it also makes it look more 3-dimensional because of that contrast, meaning the lighter area of the paper. All right, so there we have it. Now that I've got this part done, let's take it someplace else. Perhaps I want to add in a leaf to make it look like it's branches. All right, and I can integrate that into it. And I can draw in some textures to communicate that it's a leaf. And you can imagine if this were a tattoo design, you can imagine how this could become the kind of design that's very floral. I did a tattoo design where it was ferns, and it went over the girl's arm, so it looked like she had a fern growing over her arm when I drew it. And now we can add in that V once again, take it 2 more directions. Now, this time I'm going to add another technique, where if you're not sure what to do, just watch. This is what you can do also. You can erase away a break and make an out. And watch this, everyone. I'm going to bring it up to the wall. And this time, I'm going to go through the actual path itself by once again erasing a break. And now it looks like the thread that goes through the eye of a needle. Now it's actually going straight through the path itself. I'm going to darken it in so that you can see it. And there we have it. Just an inventive spin on things, which you can incorporate into your Celtic drawing. Once again, I'm going to add that B, and we can take this to two other directions. Now, if you haven't noticed already, what begins to happen is that the drawing begins to invent its own self. So if you don't have a concept going in from the start, follow these directions, use this technique, and all you need to do is just draw two parallel lines like you see here. Make yourself a V, as you see here, and go a couple of directions. Find a wall to connect to, like you see here, and that will become the opportunity for you to create that woven effect. Here we have a place where we can connect them up. Make yourself another out. And the more of these outs that I create, and the more of these B's that I integrate into the drawing, what happens is it gives you that opportunity to create the woven effect. Now, the woven effect of one path going over top of the other, that is where we're going to get the grade. You're going to get the grade for adding in the negative spaces, the value to create that effect of one laced line going over top of the other. And when you shade this in, everybody, shade it in so that it looks like it's just sort of fading away. It gets kind of lighter as it moves away, all right? You get a grade for, as I mentioned earlier, the negative spaces. You want to fill those in. And once again, folks, this step should be the very last. So you have opportunities to make changes. You get a grade for your creativity. You want to include some sort of a drawing, an animal. It could be a name that you slip into the art, integrate into the art, so that we get a picture. And as you can see, the more I add to it, the more it expands over the page. And you're going to get a grade for going one end of the paper to the other, working this Celtic art design. And when we shade it in the very end, the look of it changes dramatically. It begins to have, well, for those of you that like tattoos, it has that tattoo style, that tattoo-like effect. The Celts were into tattoos, and these designs and this style or this technique is what was used to make Celtic tattoos. Now back then they didn't have ink as you would see in a tattoo shop today. Instead they used berries to make the inks. It was all natural. But the inks back then weren't as sophisticated as they are today. So tattoos, they would fade over time. What happens with a tattoo is that your skin grows over top of the ink, and then that's what makes a person who's had a tattoo for a long time, that's what makes the tattoo look like it's kind of green and kind of faded. So this design is only going to work, the technique is only going to work after you've completely drawn in the design and then follow through with filling in the in-betweens and making it look 3D by applying the shadow. Alright? So that is how you draw a Celtic design.